UK Crime Book Club. Did I just make a man scream? I like this. I like this a lot. It's a great start. Thank you for joining us, Neil Lancaster and Trevor Wood, for our the first half of our Remembrance panel. Just introduce yourself, please, and let's start with a bit about your books first, and then we'll maybe ask you why you've been invited to the Remembrance panel.
Okay.
So,
you want to go first, Neil?
Do you want me to go first?
Absolutely. You're next to me. You go first.
Yeah, I'm Neil Lancaster. I'm the author of 2 series of books, the Novak series, which I haven't written for a little while, which are sort of at military-based, sort of slightly action thriller, where the protagonist is a cop, undercover cop, that sort of thing. I'm currently the author of the Max Craigie series. There are 3 books out currently, with a 4th one to come, which is called Blood Runs Cold, which is out in April next year. Max is a former Met cop, but he's moved to Scotland, and he is on a small unit that deals with police corruption, like Line of Duty, but not crap. Oh, did I say that out loud? There'll be loads of there might be fans around. You know what I mean?
I don't like watching it. I don't treat it as a lesson in police procedure. But, you know, I can suspend belief and enjoy myself. That's all right.
And also, World Productions are watching my book, so don't diss them.
You like that, aren't you?
Do you know what? Me and Neil will come with our pom-poms and cheer you on. There you go. We will show full support.
I defo will.
Introduce your books for us, Trevor, please.
Hi, I'm Trevor Wood. I'm the author of the Jimmy Mullen series, which is set in Newcastle's homeless community. Began with The Man on the Street, continued with One Way Street, and the final book in the trilogy, Dead End Street, was out this year. Jimmy Mullen is an ex-serviceman suffering with PTSD who's been living on the street when we first meet him, and stays on the street pretty much throughout the entire trilogy. And I've got a new book coming out in March, which is a standalone thriller called You Can Run, which also features some ex-servicemen, or at least one ex-serviceman, and some very dodgy mercenaries.
I've been waiting a couple of years for this book since you first told me you had a blurb for it. So I'm excited that you've both got new books
to get these things out there, Sam. It's frustrating, but, you know, it is what it is.
I have not written the first one yet, so you two are doing a cracking job. Hello to everyone who's joined us. Mills, Sarah, Kaz, thank you for pinning us, and Donna. Hello. Donna made it from work. Donna Morfitt made it home in time from work, I'm assuming you're not on the bus. So we've already got excitement for the new book, Trevor. So, and also for yours, Neil, I'm looking forward to that as well.
Yeah, and of course, with it being Remembrance, Max Craigie is an ex-soldier. He's an ex-Blackwatch infantryman, with his own share of issues arising from that.
So, both tell everyone who's watching why you were invited tonight, because you have a certain history, and we wanted authors with a certain history who also write crime fiction. So, Neil, go first.
I left school at 17 and I joined the Air Force, and I joined the RAF police. I was a dog handler. I served in, where did I serve? I was served throughout the UK. I served in Germany for 3 years. I spent some time in the Falkland Islands, and I spent some time in Cyprus. I left in 1990, and then I joined the Met Police, where I was a regular police officer, detective for 25 years. That's my background.
Trevor?
I joined the Royal Navy at 18 in 1977, which ages me somewhat considerably.
I meet someone who's older than me. It's brilliant.
I'm older than nearly everybody in the crime writing world, even those who've been doing it for years. Like,
even Agatha Christie.
So yeah, I served in the Navy for 16 years. Left in 1993. I was on 2 ships in that time, HMS Falmouth and HMS Bristol, and a countless number of shore-based jobs all over the country. Because I joined as basically an administrator. Bizarrely, my job title was writer. I was a writer. I was a writer and a leading writer and a petty officer writer and a chief petty officer writer. So I've been a writer forever, really. But yeah, saw a lot of the world. Had a fantastic time. But I just got, a bit too old to carry on doing the play hard, work hard thing, which I embraced wholeheartedly for 16 years. But you have to stop sometime.
We've got some more hellos, and we've got Mill saying thank you both for your service.
And that's very kind, Donna. Thank you, very kind. The lighting in here must be extraordinary if I don't look a day over 40.
You don't look a day over 40. Neil, you don't look a day over 21.
Yeah, blimey, flipping heck, Tucker.
I was asked earlier on why this is such a poignant thing for me to do. I was an army wife, not for as long as you two, not that you were army wives, but 5 years. So I met my husband when I was 19, married him at 20, and was an army wife for 5 years. And it's an interesting life. Can I say that? That's about as far as I'm going to go. Did a little bit of traveling and then came back to England. So
I'm actually obviously I got married. I got married very young. I'm on my second marriage now, which is not an unusual thing in the line of work I've been in. But my first 2 kids were born in Germany when I was serving over in Germany. So yeah, my kids were both we used to call them scaly brats.
I've not heard that one.
No,
my kids were pad brats.
Pad brats. We used to call them scaly brats for some sort of thing. I don't know why, but so yeah, two of my boys were born in RAF hospitals, and one of them now, which makes this quite poignant for me. And I have a tale. If you want me to get to it later, maybe I'll tell it in a bit. My youngest son, my youngest son is only 12. My middle son, Richard, is a Royal Marine Commando. He's been in for. He's actually a colour sergeant. We're just about to be promoted to colour sergeant now. He's been in 17 years now. And he's seen a lot more. I mean, I joined, and I guess, Trev, you are much the same. We both joined at that time where you joined up, you watched a lot of videos, you dicked about overseas, and you got paid for it. Now,
I didn't expect to be involved in any kind of fighting. That wasn't.
No. Whereas my son joined up, my son Richard joined up in 2005. He was very young when he joined up. He was only 16. But just after his 18th birthday, he was deployed to Iraq. And he did a 6-month tour in Iraq. And then a little while later, he went to Afghanistan for 7 months. And then sometime after that, he went to Afghanistan for another 7 months. Right. So I've lived it as a parent. And that's worse than doing it yourself. Not that I've done it myself, but having been a cop for a long time and going out there and getting involved in all sorts of stuff and having stuff like that happen, it's much worse sitting at home worrying about every car that comes into the cul-de-sac where we used to live. Yeah. And so, yeah, it means a lot to me. This time of year is very important to me, and I know it will be to you as well, Trev, because, it strikes home about service, about sacrifice, about your friends, about people that you have died. And, we none of us can forget about this. None of us can forget about this.
No, I mean, I was much the same as Neil, except to my complete surprise, we had a Falklands War, which came completely out of nowhere. Nobody was really expecting it. I never got sent down there, which was fortunate for me, certainly. But I did have a lot of friends who were on ships that got torpedoed and sunk, and that was all pretty traumatic because I don't think any of them would have been expecting that kind of thing to happen in their service, if you like.
Well, yeah, because back then, for most servicemen, not so much Navy, but for people in the Air Force, people in the infantry, and all that, they would go around. They'd either be in Germany or wherever it was, and then they go to Northern Ireland for 6 months, and then they come home again. But that was very different. And I mean, I'll tell this story now. It seems the appropriate time because it's if I get slightly emotional, it's because I get slightly emotional about this because it was a really tough time. This was in 2006, literally this time, in 2016. My son Richard was just 18. He'd not long had his 18th birthday and he deployed to Iraq. And he phoned me up a couple of times and said, "Oh, it's okay, Dad. Yeah, we're at Basra Palace, etc., etc." Now, he was attached to 539 Assault Squadron, and their job was to patrol the Shat al-Arab, which is the river that goes right the way through Basra. Now, of course, that was a hotbed of Shia militia. activity at the time. It was a bad place to be. They were getting contacts all the time, constantly being shot at, RPG attacks. But their job was to patrol the river, and they would be on rigid raiders, like the fast boats that the Marines use. Now, my son, Rich, he said to me, he phoned me up a couple of days before, and he said, I'm not feeling so great, but we're all right, and it's here, and it's fine. And then it was like quite literally 16 years, borderline to the day, I was an obsessive viewer of the news at that particular time because, your son's in a war zone, so what are you going to do? And it flashed up on the BBC, 4 soldiers killed on the Shatt al-Arab. And I thought, Jesus, this is not good, because they were a small unit. There was only, sort of 40, 50 of them. And 4 soldiers were killed. I didn't find out for 48 hours that my son was not one of those. Because what happens is when something like that happens in Warzone, they call Op Minimize, they call it Operation Minimize. They shut off all the phones, they shut off all the internet. You know this, Sam. You know this. And so you don't get to hear. So you're constantly trying to make phone calls, and it says, look, we can't tell you, families are being informed. And it was 48 hours later, he phoned me and said, 2 of my best friends have been killed. And it broke me, it really broke me. It was really fucking hard. I'm happy to swear about it, but it's really fucking hard. And it rams home to me, and it rams home to me this day, is that the soldiers are out there, they're doing their stuff. But for every soldier that's out there, there's a whole big family. And I've got a big family, there's probably 20 odd people, all constantly looking at the news feeds, crapping themselves. So yeah, this is why every year that goes by, I never ever stop thinking about it, and I never stop thinking about what happened and what happened that day. And the fact is, the only reason he wasn't on that rigid raider, and it was his rigid raider that got taken out, was that he had food poisoning, and he got down the end of the jetty and he was sick. He threw up because and a few of them had norovirus or something, and they got told, right, you're back, you're in isolation. But without that, he'd have been on that rigid raider. That rigid raider where 4 soldiers got killed. So, yeah.
Wow.
It's really important.
It really is very important. How do you both commemorate the day? So, excuse me. Yeah, you have made me emotional. How could we not, hearing that? So, obviously, I'm not the one who was in the army. I was the one at home. But we've done different things over the years. We've had, Remembrance Sundays with friends and family. We've had just little quiet ones at home. We've had ones where we've gone to the cenotaph. We've done lots of different things. One of them, on the actual 11th, I was in college. I was redoing my maths at 37. So not too long ago. And my tutor was a former soldier. So we went over to cross the road to the park where the War Memorial was. And that's where we spent our time. Do you have a kind of routine for Remembrance Day, or is this something that changes as the years go
on? For me, it just depends where I am, what I'm doing, really. I generally just have a really quiet day. It's a bit odd today because I'm in London for various reasons. I actually had lunch with my agent today, so that was quite nice. And I was travelling at 11 o'clock, which is always a bit awkward when you're on a tube train. So I just have quiet moments, really. I don't do anything particularly special.
Yeah, I mean, today I'm much the same. I was just doing my thing, and I look at the clock, and then I sit quietly to myself. On the Sunday, unless I can't, because this is only since back in the day when I'd maybe be at work or something like that. But now, since I just do what I do for a living, I will always go somewhere. But I'm not comfortable at the big parades. I'm not comfortable at the big events. There used to be one where I used to live in St Albans, which was a big deal, a huge, great deal, with everybody there and everybody wanting to be seen there. And I used to just get a little bit of a thing with the local MP being there and all the councillors, and I didn't like that. So I would prefer to go somewhere really small. On Sunday, I live in the Highlands of Scotland. There's a very small village just down the hill from me called Fortrose. And my friend's son, he's an ex-naval aviator. He's going to be playing the bagpipes, and there's a little bagpipe thing. And we all have a moment there, and that's good enough for me. That's all I need to do.
Yeah, I'm the same about avoiding the big stuff. I don't do that. I think a lot of ex-servicemen feel the same way. I'm very conscious. I don't really like to see people glorifying war as if it's some kind of, I guess it's a kind of right-wing attachment to some of it that I don't like. So I like quiet commemoration. People who've been involved in that don't do that. They don't glorify it. They recognise the service that people have given and the sacrifices they've made. So I'm very careful about avoiding the big celebrations.
They sometimes feel to me like it's people want to be seen there. Now, look, I don't want to. I'm not criticising anyone because we all do this our way. But my son Richard and he'd done 3 tours by this time. He was home with me when we were living in St Albans, and I said, it's Remembrance Sunday. Do you want to go up and go into St Albans and go to the monument? And he goes, yeah. I goes, do you want anything else? Do you need to get your medals? Do you need to get your uniform? He went, no. And he just went quietly there and stood and did it quietly, and he left. But that might not work for everybody. Other people might want to do the whole marching up and down with the putting their medals on and all that. But I don't want to do that, and I just don't. But I wouldn't criticise anybody for however they want to do it. I think what's important is that whoever you are, whatever your political beliefs, maybe we should all take a moment just to sort of reflect, because it's very easy. The word Nazi gets thrown around a lot nowadays. The word Nazi is one of the most overused and ill-conceivedly used words out there today. Let's not forget that we are still in living memory where there were real proper Nazis, real Nazis who wanted to invade everybody. They wanted to wipe out entire races. Let's not forget what that means. And let's I don't even know what the point was, but no, seriously. But let's not forget what it really is about.
Yeah, no, completely agree. I do think we started off with the we'll go to the cenotaph, not marching, not kind of, just kind of stood to the side, stood at the back, and then we kind of thought we're dragging the kids out. It's freezing, and really that's not why we're doing it. So yeah, it's very much a quiet thing at home for us now. So I absolutely where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, but I will not criticise anyone for however they want to do it.
No,
it's a personal decision is the way I look at it. It's like wearing a poppy. It's a personal decision. Wear one, don't wear one. I don't care.
Yeah, normally not at all.
Got to admit, did give it a lot of thought and then decided I will. But it's each to their own. But I did consider both sides of it and wondered whether you two would wear one. So the choice was in the end. I did it. So
yeah, I tell you what, I'll wear one on Sunday. I haven't got anywhere to put one on a hoodie, but I don't give it a great deal more thought than that.
No.
But that's the most I've thought about it in years, I'll be honest. The most I've thought about, do I wear one? Do I not wear one? It's a remembrance panel. So there you go. It's not an easy thing. There's so many more. There's so much more to consider than just the symbol of the poppy. There's so much more attached to it that I don't really want us to get into.
No.
I do have one question for you both. When you left the forces, when you left the police, did you go through the hairy stage where, because you suddenly don't have to look a certain way, and did you go through the hairy scruffy stage? I've seen a lot of friends go through this stage.
I might have gone a bit scruffy, possibly, but my hair's always been pretty short. I prefer it that way. My hair grows up, and it becomes like a bloody helmet if I don't get it cut regularly. So I try and keep on top of that. Really, I only had it cut a couple of days ago, actually. But I might have gone a bit scruffy, possibly. I went almost straight into journalism when I left the forces, and journalists are by definition pretty scruffy, I think. I quite enjoyed writing. I wrote a journalist character in my first book, and he was a mess.
It was a mess.
Yeah, and a couple of the guys I used to work with were going, "Is that me?" But yeah, he was a mess. So yeah, I probably did go a bit scruffy, but not the hair.
Neil?
Yeah, I'm the same because I've always had short hair. I don't think I've ever had. This is my standard length of hair. In fact, needs cutting. Mostly because I'm the same as Trevor. I've got crap hair, and I end up looking like Simon Cowell if I let it go any longer. And also now I'm getting a bit thin, so it looks worse if you try and do anything with it. So that's it needs cutting. But yeah, I left. I left the RAF where you had a certain standard of dress. It wasn't difficult to keep to. I then joined the Met and I was in uniform. Half the Met, they look like unmade beds. They're so bloody scruffy. They really are. But then I was in policing. I was a detective. I did an awful lot of covert work. So my job was to blend in. So I wasn't particularly smart. I was useless in a suit. I couldn't bear wearing a suit to work, and I would do everything in my power to avoid wearing a suit. And then when I left, I don't know, nothing really changed apart from the fact I could downsize my wallet, which was great because for so many years, and Trev, you'll remember this, you had to have your ID card on you in the forces. Don't even think about not having your ID card on you.
I was terrible at losing it. I used to lose it all the damn time.
It was the thing. You're going through basic training. It would be all the things. Where's your ID card? Where's your ID card?
Yeah.
But then I joined the Met, and of course you've got a warrant card, but the warrant card sits heavily in your pocket because with it, it's not just an ID card. It is a responsibility, and it's a responsibility in that if shit happens in front of you, that warrant card, it does give you a nudge up the backside that, do I need to do something here? I can't just be a bystander. So to lose that warrant card, and it's a big old bulky thing, and to take that out of my wallet, all of a sudden I had a thin wallet. And that was the thing that got me, is I didn't have to worry about my wallet. I was always scared about losing my wallet because I had my warrant card in. Because if you lost your warrant card, it was like a discipline offence because, it's a valuable bit of kit. It's a big commodity. So I had this, it was like taking off tight shoes, losing my warrant card and suddenly just becoming a member of the public. And I've been 7 years, there's not, I haven't missed it once, not even 5 minutes, I haven't missed it. Loads of people I know, and it's the same for the forces. Many people, they can't let go. Many people in forces, they can't let go. And these are the guys probably that you see at the Legion with still wearing their berets, still with their medal rails. Yeah. I'm not criticising that. I genuinely am not. That's how you are. I kept nothing. I've got nothing from my military days. I just lost it all or gave it away, which is what I'm like. I get stuff and I lose stuff. And I have nothing. I mean, I've got my Jubilee medal. I haven't got any proper medals, but I've got my Jubilee medal, my Police Long Service medal. They're just tucked away somewhere. I wouldn't get them out. I don't even look at them. I haven't looked at them since I got them. So it's bizarre. It's a bizarre. I went through a strange phase, really.
I haven't got anything. I've got a cap. I've got my naval cap somewhere.
No, I've got nothing.
Not at home. So
I wish I did. Now I'm regretting it. Now I'm I'm 56 now. I actually regret not having some of these things that I could have kept.
There's not much point keeping your uniform, though, is there? I mean, it's never going to fit you.
No. 10 years. I don't know. I am still lean.
I've seen you in real life. No, that's just not true, frankly.
That was in the bar. You were drunk.
Yeah, that's a given, probably. I remember actually, apropos of nothing really, but because you were an army wife, I pretty much left the Navy as I met my wife, because she was living in Newcastle. She moved to Newcastle not long after I'd met her, and there was no chance of us maintaining a relationship with me living in Portsmouth and her in Newcastle, and there's no naval base anywhere near Newcastle. So it was one of the reasons I left. But we'd only been married about kind of 6 months when I left. And she got one of those packs sent to her as an ex-service wife. These are the things you need to know about finding accommodation and all this kind of thing. She was a bloody psychology professor, for God's sake. She was like 38 years old. She was perfectly capable. She got this list of instructions about how to be a grown-up.
I didn't even get a wave goodbye. Never mind a blooming pack.
All those things, telling you how to open a bank account and all that kind of stuff.
But this is just a hark back to the very old days, isn't it? When you couldn't get credit. If you were a serviceman and you went into, I don't know, I'm showing me age now, Trevor will know this, going into Rumbelows to rent a telly.
I remember Rumbelows.
Renting tellies. I wish we could rent tellies. I'd like to rent my telly.
It was a good thing. But you wouldn't be able to sign off to rent your telly from Rumbelows or your video from Rumbelows unless your CEO signed off signed off the forms. That's AU services. Yeah. Well, you can't do this without a sign off from your. I mean, it's changed now. My son's got his own house. He's bought a house. He's got a house rented out at the moment. He's with his girlfriend, and it's and it used to be that the wives followed you around, as you will know. They would follow you all around the world, and there was a hierarchy amongst the wives again. Big time.
There is if you involve yourself, if you stay right out of it.
Oh yeah, and that is the way to be. Stay the fuck away from it all.
Yeah.
But it used to be, I'm not talking, my husband's a flight sergeant. I'm not going to talk to you. Whereas now, most people have buy themselves a house and they get posted away, then the wife stays behind and they'll go back at weekends. And
when the Falklands was on, although I didn't get sent down there, my job was to make sure that everybody was getting paid properly, because they were moving people around at 10 minutes notice, sending them around. And the families didn't know where their husbands were half the time, but primarily they didn't know how to get money. So my job was to make sure wives could get money. Most of them didn't have their own bank accounts. The Navy had only just gone to the monthly pay, get money in your account. It used to be cash all the time. So
parades.
So there were thousands of wives who couldn't get any money because they didn't have a bank account. They didn't even know where their husband's bank account was. And even if they did, the bank managers wouldn't let them take money out. So my job was to ring around bank managers and gently persuade them that it wouldn't look good for them in the local press if these people were going there and saying, Mr. Smith at Barclays won't give me any money and my husband is fighting for his country down in the Falklands. I mean, it was a great job because I was getting women ringing me desperate, and within half an hour I was able to ring them back and say, go and see Brian at the Midland Bank and he'll make sure you can access the money. But it was fascinating. They just didn't even know where their bank accounts were at all.
Oh, I mean, when I'm assuming this was the same for you again, Trevor, when I first joined, you would it'd be payday on a Friday and you'd all line up. You'd literally line up and they'd go Lancaster, and you'd march up T8217392 AC Lancaster, and they'd literally then count out 28, 27, 30 quid. There you go. Pay correct, sir. And you'd march off. And that'd be your wedge.
I was the guy doing the counting and handing the money out. That was one of my jobs. That was great.
Straight to the pub. Straight to the pub, and that'd be you.
Millionaire for an hour.
Wages done for the week after the weekend. It was great. It was a good time. It was good fun.
We have got lots of love for the books in the chat. So we've got Jimmy Mullen fans, Tom Novak fans, Max.
No, I haven't got my glasses because I can't read them.
It's all right. That's my job. It's fine. I just get you two to talk, and I sit back and listen more than anything else. Kaz was also an army brat, but was born in an RAF hospital.
Oh, okay.
Steve, hello, Steve. Saying great to see us. We've got, Sarah her dad was based at RAF Bryce Norton during the Falklands. Flown out from Bryce Norton, quite familiar with that airport.
Yeah, I flew in and out of there a couple of times.
No fun travelling with the army, and you'd think everyone would be more organised. Have you ever travelled with all the families?
No, I got when I went to Germany. I was married when I went to Germany, and and my wife at the time was pregnant. But they don't care. The forces just didn't care. They said, right, off you go. You go off to Germany, and then my poor wife was trying to sort it all out and sort the move out and all that whilst I was on the piss in the Navy, basically.
The Navy's not like that at all. It's different to the other two services because obviously 9 times out of 10, the wives don't go anywhere near where the husband's going because we're on a ship. So there's not so many. There's a very tiny number of jobs abroad, but 90% of it is either based in the UK or the guys are on ships and they're sailing around the world. So you don't quite have that same family following you around thing.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't happen.
Under curse, that.
It just doesn't happen so much anymore. It doesn't happen. It used to be a big deal, and you'd have these whole communities that would form.
Yeah,
and they'd be on like 2-3 year cycles. these communities forming with the dynamics and the big characters and the other ones and the people who got involved in everything and those that didn't. So it was it was basically like Big Brother that was being ever repeated. Honestly, it was. And oh God, some of the stories. But yeah, all good fun.
I've just got a comment from Donna that I'm going to read out, and then I'm going to ask you to go back to your story, Neil. There was a story you were going to tell us.
Now that
right
I've already told it. I told
Is that
it.
the one you told? Okay.
It was, yeah. I got there early because it was sitting in my mind, so I needed to get it out
there. Donna said she found out her granddad, who joined up at the end of the Second World War, was sent out to find the unexploded bombs, was actually finding all the mass graves and recovering bodies. No wonder he didn't want to tell us. I didn't read to the end of that, Donna, before I read that out. Wow. Okay, that's not an easy thing. No wonder he didn't want to talk about it. But there must be lots of things that you do want to talk about. Have you still got friendships from then? Are the people that you're still in touch with, Neil and Trevor?
I've got very sweetly. I'm doing Iceland Noir next week. I'm going to Reykjavik.
Congratulations.
Which is pretty cool. But there's an old Navy friend of mine. I've only seen him once in about 25 years. He was living in Manchester, but he's now working in Reykjavik, and he's picking me and my wife up at the airport and taking us in because it's miles away, the airport in Reykjavik. So I've got one of my old Navy mates just picking me up from the airport and showing me around a bit, which will be lovely.
How lovely is that?
Yeah,
that'll save you about 1,400 quid in a taxi.
I know it's about 45 minutes from Reykjavik to the airport. It's probably a long way. I was wondering how I was going to do it, and he's just going to pick us up. But yeah, I'm not really in touch with many at all. Actually, because of social media, I'm a bit more in touch with some of them. There's like a Facebook page for HMS Bristol, which I was on, so there's some people on there that I know. So I have reconnected it with a few, but in real life, I mean, I've seen Ian, the guys in Reykjavik once. He came to a gig in Newcastle and stayed at my house. And there's maybe one other guy that I occasionally see, and that's about it.
I've still got a couple of best friends, and then some people who are a bit more through social media, like you were saying. But and my husband's got a couple of close friends still, but you do tend to drift a bit.
I think it's part of the, I mean, certainly for me, part of the service thing is you change your job I change my job every 2 years or so. So you've got a great group of friends, but then you move somewhere else and you have another group of friends and then you move somewhere else. So you don't take them with you so much.
You meet people and you move on, and the odd ones stick. My best friend today was my best friend in 1984. And we were in training together in the RAF, and we both stayed for 6 years, and I went off into the police. He's ended up in business. In fact, he's loaded now. He's properly loaded. But he's still my best mate. We're still rude to each other constantly, which is the military way. You're rude to your pals all the time, non-stop. You never say anything nice to each other. You're always rude to each other. And there are a couple of guys, like you say, the whole social media thing. But really, I got one proper pal from my days in the military. And he's still my best mate now. And he's been my best mate for, 38 years. So,
My best mate in the Navy had a really cool job not that long ago. He was the chief engineer on Roman Abramovich's yacht, which I was like, that was the only time I've been jealous of anybody else who left the service. I'm like, that was a cool job.
That is quite a cool job.
Yeah. Although he did say it was really annoying because, being Roman Abramovich, he would literally ring up on Friday and say, right, I want the yacht in Jamaica in 4 days' time or something. They were constantly being pulled all over the place, never knew what was going on.
Mills has commented, gosh, have you really only been out 7 years, Neil? My uncle has been retired for 15-ish years, and he's still so much like a police officer. Question I've got for you both is, are there any habits that you've retained?
Ooh.
So I wrote that. So I've written down habits that have stuck. For example, keeping certain routines or avoiding routines altogether. And I already touched on the avoiding shaving and things before, and the bird's nest.
Actually, I'm glad you said that because I couldn't think of a damn thing there. But actually, I've always wet shaved, always, and I still do. And I think that it started in the Navy. I think sometimes, access to a electric razor wasn't easy when you're on ships and things like that. And that's just stuck with me. But that's probably, I can't think of anything else.
The shaving thing, the wet shave, I can imagine as well that an electric razor, even if you could charge it, sometimes your skin must be so dry.
Yeah,
the idea
I never took to them.
Sounds brutal. Neil?
Nothing really. I don't know. I mean, maybe other people, this is the sort of thing other people could ask me, but I mean, I haven't had a shave in 7 years. I honestly just buzz it. Let it get a bit scraggy looking, and I buzz it off with a beard trimmer. I mean, I haven't shaved in 7 years. I will never wear a suit unless I have to. I've tried to send myself away from anything to do with policing.
Very weirdly, sorry, go on.
No, it's just, I mean, it's more police. It's about being. I mean, I was a police officer really for a long time. I was in the RAF for a comparatively small amount of time, even though the impact of it is probably quite significant. But I don't know. But I've always been like this. I do stuff. I have a good time. I move on and I forget about it. I don't forget about it. I leave it behind. And I'll move to the next thing. I've always loved where I've lived. I've always enjoyed what I've done. I think now I'm in the best place I've ever been. I live in a beautiful part of the world in the Highlands of Scotland. I've got a nice house, and I'm really lucky. But then before, where I used to live in St Albans, but I thought that was the best place. And then before that, when I was there, that was great as well. But then I move on, and I don't think about it again. Really,
the weirdest connection for me is that when I was on ships, you live and work in exactly the same place. So my bed was here. I came out of one door, walked 10 yards through another door, and I was in my office. That was my life for 18 months twice. And now I've been doing the same thing for 20 years. I work from home. I come out of my bedroom and I make a cup of coffee and I walk into the office. And it's like I quite like that routine of never having to commute anywhere. And just
I commuted for 25 years, and
drive me crazy.
It was what I hated. I mean, the job was getting quite difficult when I left the police. It was getting more and more tricky, and God knows I feel so sorry for the guys doing it now, because they're pulled from pillar to post with matters that they have no control over when it comes to all the other failing social services that they're having to fill in the gaps for. But my problem was I used to get up at 6, I'd be on the train at 6:45, I'd get home 13 hours later. And that was my day, every single day, 5 days a week. And I used to often be doing overtime at the weekends. And I was doing, 80, 90 hours a week at times when I was on big homicide inquiries and things like that. So to me, to not have to get up in the morning and go and get on a train and then schlep on a train with the whole world's woes and the depression, because you've got hundreds of people in the carriage with you, all pissed off and depressed. And it sinks into your bones, and everyone's got to earn so much money to pay their enormous mortgages in the southeast of England. And so now I wake up in the morning and I go, what have I got to do apart from get the boy down the road for the bus? And then I come back and I switch on my laptop and I just dream up stories, and invent characters. See if I can write something that's a bit funny today. And, can I make someone laugh with a bit of banter, or make someone tense with a bit of action, or make someone gasp with a twist? Trevor, you're the same. I know you are. It's a gift. It's an absolute dream situation to be in. And then when you write these books and you put them out there, and the reviews come back, and people that I'm seeing in the comments here, Sarah, Donna, Mills, who I know love the books and say lovely things about them, and it does mean an enormous amount. We write books, and we write books for ourselves, and I do write books for myself. I write the books I want to read. I write books I know I'd like to read, and the stories I want to tell. And then when other people tell you that they love them, it's a big feather in your cap, and I bet you're the same, Trev.
Yeah, no, absolutely identical. It's an absolute joy doing this for a living, and readers are amazing, and bloggers are amazing. It's all great. I mean, there's no downside to somebody telling you that they like your book. It's always a joy. Always a joy.
I don't ever whinge about it.
Oh, nice.
That's not. I know that's a lie. Actually, I do whinge about certain aspects of it because we all do. And writers, when they get together, what we mostly do is whinge, as well as having a laugh and getting drunk. But we all whinge, and we whinge about. Is any of my publishers looking? We whinge about our publishers or our whoever. And I've got great publishers. I really like my publishers. They're really nice people. But the reality is, we also all know if we're earning a living out of this, if we can pay the bills out of this, we are blessed and we are very lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, without question.
Give us a recap of your books before I switch you out for our next two authors.
I haven't said, by the way, Neil, I just finished The Night Watch. I thought it was great. I really enjoyed it.
You're an absolute gentleman. Thank you very much.
Lovely. Max Craig is a great character. Really like him.
No, he's a lot of fun.
And I noticed quite a few expressions that you used that I use in my books as well, but they were slightly different in places. That was quite interesting. Like the 7 Ps thing.
Yes.
I've used that in my latest book, and my 7 Ps are slightly different from yours, but it's the same.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder if they're the same as the one that I've learned.
Prior prevention and planning prevents piss poor performance.
Yeah, so say that again. What was yours?
Prior prevention and planning prevents piss poor performance.
Yeah, and I can't remember what mine are now. Give me a minute.
Neil, give us a reminder of your books, and then we'll go to Trevor for his.
Or something like it's the start is different, you know.
I write. I say the current series is the Max Craigie series. They are essentially, I think, a really nice guy called John Barlow, who's a really good author. He called it Line of Duty on steroids. I'll take that. It's the Max Craigie series of books. The most recent one is The Night Watch, which will be out in paperback on the 8th of December. The one after that is called Blood Runs Cold, and that will be out on the of April next year.
I'll give you permission now to drop a link on publication day, Neil.
I will, of course. Thank you very much.
Very welcome. Go on, Trevor.
My series is the Jimmy Mullen series, The Man on the Street, One-Way Street and Dead End Street, set in Newcastle's homeless community with an ex-serviceman with PTSD, who is the main character, Jimmy, who is pretty much homeless, living on the streets throughout the 3-book trilogy. And my new book, that's why I just legged it, because I remembered I had a proof, which has only just been produced. I think there's supposed to be a cover reveal, so don't tell anybody you've seen this.
We do love an exclusive.
Which is called You Can Run. It's set in a remote Northumberland village where a group of armed mercenaries lay siege to the village looking for a 15-year-old girl. And the only people who can help her are the villagers that she's shunned her entire life, including one ex-serviceman who joins forces with all the other villagers to help her. And it's out in March.
Brilliant.
Sounds great, man. Sounds great.
Thank you both so much for joining us. Thank you to all of the members. I hope you'll stick around for the second part, which is we're going to hide Neil and Trevor somewhere, and then we're going to bring in Les and Alison. Thank you both so much. It's meant a lot to me that you made the time to join us. So thank you.
No problem at all.
It's been a pleasure.
This is where you all start disappearing, and I sit here and talk to myself for a minute. Hello. Hi, Les. Hi. Are we going by LJ Morris or are we going by Les? What would you prefer?
No, I think Les will be easier, I think.
And I believe Alison, hello. Lovely to see you as well. Oh, okay. Les, do you want to start us off by introducing yourself while we get Alison in? She's disappeared.
Yeah, I'm Les Morris. As you said, I write as LJ Morris. The books that I'm mainly known for are the Alice Sinclair series of thrillers, which Alice Sinclair is ex-military, so obviously I've used my own experiences to try and make them a bit more true to life. And I currently have a book out called Legacy of Guilt, which is another ex-military character.
Thank you. Alison, hello.
Hello. Well, I'm glad the technology's working.
Don't jinx it.
Oh, sorry. Right. Not going to say that anymore. Okay. I write a series of two series actually. One is alternate Roman history, where a little bit of the Roman Empire managed to survive to now. And as we all know, Rome was a military society. So, and I did 6 years in the Royal Signals and have used my experience from that. I have a heroine, not a hero, military heroine, who's in that series is a member of the Praetorian Guard Special Forces, and she does all those things that you would expect somebody in Special Forces to do. Now, of course, that'll cause controversy, but hey. The other series is a modern French spy thriller series. I've done 2 so far. And
I'm not going to try and pronounce the name.
No, Melisande.
Thank you.
Or known as Mel in English, because she's got a French father and a British mother. And she's ex-French forces. And that took a lot of research. And she does stuff. Again, she's ex-French forces as the equivalent of a staff sergeant or WO2 in the British forces, that kind of rank. And she's been recruited into this enigmatic intelligence organization. So that's the second one. But the first one, my Romanova books, are the ones where our heroine is not quite sure about military life. She's a bit of I'm going to hesitate to use the word maverick, but she doesn't quite always obey everything, but she gets the job done.
That's the important bit. I'm going to jump straight on to Les. You were just saying about being able to use your own experience. Does there come a point where you have to draw a line for both of you, between what actually happened to you that you maybe can't talk about and how you fictionalize it? How do you weigh up that?
Well, I think one of the problems is if you wrote everything as it actually happens in the military, nobody would read it. It should be boring. You spend most of your time not doing anything really, nothing worth writing about anyway. So I think you have to dramatize it quite a lot. As far as being able to write things that you can't really talk about, I don't think there's a lot of that really. Not in my books anyway. I'm not going into that much detail about anything military. All of my characters are ex-military. So
This is going to be fun, Alison.
We've lost Les. Les, where are you?
Do you want to start answering and Les can finish answering when he comes back? I'll just say to everybody watching, we had to switch to Kaz's Be Live because Trevor couldn't see me or Kaz on mine, couldn't see Neil. So we switched to Kaz's, and that was really, you jinxed us, Alison.
Oh, sorry about that. I was going to ask Les what he was in, you see. I was just going to get him finished. And I said, what were you in? And because a lot of military people go to the same places or know a lot of you are never surprised by running across somebody you know.
Yeah.
And it's often very fleeting. You might just be sitting in Bryce Norton and you see somebody, where are you off to? Oh, well, I've just come back from X. And I'm going, oh, right, do you know old Santa? Oh, yes, how are they doing? And it depends, but certainly in the Royal Signals, it's a small area. And very peculiar that was. Very, very funny. So, so I was going to ask him what he was. To answer your question, I was in hello, Les. Yes, let Les finish.
Back again.
What were you in, Les?
I was in the Royal Navy.
Royal Navy, okay.
Yeah. So, like I said, I mean, there wasn't really a lot of things that you can't talk about. Because my characters are all ex-military, they're not talking about a lot of things that might be current. They just talk about maybe a little experience here or something that's happened to them there. Nothing sort of secret or anything like that. So it's not really a problem.
It's more the routine. I think a lot of civilians don't know what you might think is very boring. I might think it's very boring. But a lot of people just have absolutely no idea. So that's probably quite intriguing, just the day-to-day sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got to admit, that's... I think a lot of people think their own life isn't interesting at all because they've lived it and they're done with it and they're over it. They're bored by it.
Yeah,
don't
it's
want to
just
do
yours,
it
isn't it?
But somebody else picking it up and reading it, it's fascinating.
I think that would be very interesting. I mean, I was in a special communications regiment. We were a squadron. And let's just say I'm a linguist and I speak pretty fluent German. I certainly used to.
Wow.
And it was in the 80s, so I'm that old, yes. And we crawl around the East German border and all the rest of it. So we were doing some quite exciting things. I'm sorry about that. So no, I'm not going to tell you anything.
Wouldn't dream of asking you, Alison.
But I think the thing you get from the military life is the sense of purpose, the sense of doing something together, the sense of the job has got to be done, so you might as well get stuck in and do it. You can be sitting there freezing on the North German plain, well, tough banana, basically. And you wouldn't say banana in services, because as Les said, you cannot write most of the conversations that have happened. I take 80% of the Anglo-Saxon out of my books because it would be unreadable. Sorry, you're smiling. You know exactly what I'm saying. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't take a lot of it out. I think I've had a lot of comments about the way my characters talk to each other, the ones that are ex-military,
right.
and they've been complimentary. That because I'm ex-military, I understand how the military talk to each other, and the way they do, they make fun of each other all the time. They've got
All
a really
the
dark
time.
sense of humor. They can be in a really tight spot and still making jokes about it. And I try and put that in, and I think that's where some of the experience comes across, knowing how the military is, just being in the military, what sort of character you get just by being in.
I think you're absolutely right. And you can always, when you talk to somebody just for a few minutes, you always know that they've done it. You always know because they're very succinct. They don't mess about. It's an instant communication, isn't it? It's that shared experience, and you never forget it.
Yeah, no, and in a lot of cases, most of my ex-military characters tend to be Royal Marines because they use the same slang words as the Royal Navy do. So it's easy to write dialogue using the same slang. If I was writing an army character, I'd have to research that I've got the right slang word that they might use for something that the Navy didn't, and that kind of thing. So I have to be careful. So that's why I tend to fall into the easy option of just using a Marine.
Yeah, well, that's fair enough. I mean, my characters are in an imagined military unit, but they still behave like soldiers in the same sort of way. So I'm afraid they're like British Army soldiers, but Roman ones, and in the modern 21st century. They still have to do training. They still have to submit to the discipline. There's still a way of talking to different ranks. There's that thing when you're sitting on the top of a freezing mountain trying to take out the bad guys. One gets shot, the other next one takes over, and there's none of this. Oh, how awful! None of that. It's just get Kazivac, next one in, and it's that instant. Now it seems very harsh and hard, but you are there to do a job. And I think if you've got to put that in your books, and I think that makes them far more authentic.
Yeah, you wouldn't expect everybody to stand around and not get on with what you were there to do. That's just going to cause more problems.
Absolutely, completely. And all, so I mean, my unit was mixed, so we had women and men doing, let's just say, communications in very difficult places. And there's none of this, the blokes having to protect the girls' lark. The girls were all armed. I mean, they say the women in the military weren't armed until XYZ. Well, we all were. There's no way you were going into that kind of a theatre unless you were proficient in defending yourself.
My main character in my first book's Alison. Obviously, it's a female-led story. She's actually based on my niece, who served in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Right.
So a lot of the memories that the character has, a lot of the things that she talks about in flashbacks and things like that actually happened in a way to my niece. Obviously I've dramatized some of them a little bit and taken some of the details out, but the idea that the men go off and fight and the women stay back
Oh,
at camp
yeah.
or whatever. It's just total rubbish. You know.
Yeah, complete rubbish. Where was your niece? What was your niece in?
She was in the army. She was
Which?
in the Royal Veterinary Corps,
Oh,
and she was a dog handler for the explosive sniffer dogs.
right. Oh, that's it. Yeah.
So she used to go
Yeah.
out on patrol with the army guys in Afghanistan
DODs.
and Iraq, looking
Yeah.
for all the roadside bombs and everything.
That was not exactly a safe job, was it?
Yeah, yeah. But that's that in jobs like that, that's where you tend to see a lot of women in those jobs, rather than. I mean, I know that you don't get women in the British Army in that many sort of infantry type roles,
God,
or
I mean, hard work. Hard
yeah.
work.
And at the moment, obviously, you don't see them in the paras and the marines and things like that. But I'm sure that'll come. But in jobs like dog handling and this type of thing, there are a lot of women who carry out those roles in the army,
Mm.
and, in the line of fire.
Well, we're all.
Do you think it's made easier for women to enter those roles than it is for them to maybe enter other roles?
I think infantry training is incredibly hard work. I mean, every soldier, male or female, is trained in basic infantry skills. You don't get through unless you can do that because you're
Yeah.
a soldier. I personally, although I would defend anybody's right to do it, I personally would never go near being an infantry person. It's just such hard work physically, and you've got to think that women have a different physical makeup. Their strength is in a different place. They haven't got the upper body strength that a man has, a fit man has. We're all our strength is in our hips for obvious purposes. So to get to the level that an infantry man can do, you're going to go some. But I defend your right to do it. But you still have to do basic infantry tasks, whatever branch or arm or regiment you're in. So I wouldn't specialise in it.
No, I think everybody goes where they fancy going, don't they?
Yes.
So
Yes.
I mean, when you look at the elite units like the paras and the marines, and obviously women can now join both of those. I think the first woman passed P Company for the paras a couple of months ago.
No, it's that recent, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's not because the opportunity isn't there. It's because it's so difficult. There aren't many men who can get into the paras.
Yeah.
Or the marines, and like you say, it is all about fitness and strength, and sometimes it's just not possible. With all the will in the world, it's just not possible.
Absolutely right.
I'm not one to comment. I think these days I'd struggle with the Krypton factor. So certainly not my area of specialty. No. I always quite fancied doing that, but
in the Navy it's different, obviously, because you're on a ship, so you can do most jobs on a ship regardless of gender.
Yeah.
You're not under the same physical pressure that the army are under when they're out in the field. So the Navy, and I suspect the RAF is probably the same. It's a different thing altogether, with having mixed gender in the same roles.
I mean, a female pilot is a hard job, but a female pilot can be a fighter pilot. I mean, there are fighter pilots in the RAF. It's very strenuous, and I should imagine you do have to be fit to be able to keep up the concentration and the physicality of being in that kind of a role. But you're perfectly okay physically to be able to do that. Yeah. Yeah.
Kaz wants to know what inspired you to write. So I'm wondering whether when you had downtime between different things, were you always writing then when you were in the forces, or is this something that's new to you both?
Do you want to go, Liz?
Well, I've always read. When I was a kid, I always read, but I was a bit strange in that I've never read kids' books. When I started reading, well, I had a teacher at school that used to read to us for 20 minutes at the end of every day. And the first book he read to us was Danny, the Champion of the World by Roald Dahl.
Oh,
One of my favourite books ever. I've read this to hundreds of children. Love it.
My youngest son's called Daniel, so that's where that came from.
I went dressed as Danny once to a World Book Day when I worked in a primary school.
Yeah.
So this is how much I love this book. Sorry, you got me all giddy. Go on.
So, of course, after having that read to me, I went looking for other Roald Dahl books. And I found Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and read that, and The Great Glass Elevator. And then I was in a junk shop, which is where I got most of my books from. And I found a book called Kiss Kiss by Roald Dahl, which is a collection of short stories, which were the basis for Tales of the Unexpected.
Yeah.
And they're really dark short stories.
I haven't read them, but I am aware of them.
I read that when I was 9. And from that moment on, I never read another kid's book. It was all, I was reading things like The Dogs of War and Day of the Jackal and things like that when I was 10, 11 years old. And that carried on right through my military career. But I didn't write that much. I just read a lot. I was always reading. There was so much downtime that you're always reading something. But I didn't actually start writing again until I'd left. So, I mean, looking back on it, the amount of time I could have put into writing when I was in, if I thought about it, but it just never occurred to me.
You were studying your craft. You were enjoying the words. It's all part of the process. I've actually got The Day of the Jackal behind me.
Brilliant.
I haven't read it. I bought it a couple of months ago when I was out with Kaz, and I've been dying to read it, but I just haven't yet.
You must
One
read
of my
it.
favourite books ever.
Well, I never wrote. I mean, I've done other jobs where writing was very important. I worked in the city. I've done corporate PR stuff. I sold books, would you believe? I've been a career translator with the languages and so on. So I've done words. I've been with words and been round words. And, you know, you all write at school and all the rest of it, but you put that behind you. And I went out to see a film because my husband and I used to go on Orange Wednesday where you got in half price for 2 of you. Cheat, I know. And there was nothing else on. It was half term and it was all these Transformers and kids. And, oh, God, there's 12 screens. You'd think there'd be something. And I saw this film that had Ewan McGregor in. I thought, yeah, that works for me. You know, not a problem. Anyway, and it was filmed in Rome. And I'm a Roman nut since the age of 11, okay? I started off with Eagle of the Ninth as one of my, you know, whatever. And we went in. And, you know, I'm glad I knew the story because it was really, the dialogue was all hacked up, no continuity. Yes, it was a thriller, but there was it wasn't put together properly. I said to him, God, I can do better than this. And he said, well, why don't you? So I went home and 90 days later, I had it comes up back to front in Septio.
It doesn't on mine.
It
doesn't.
okay,
it's the right way around. We mirror the
I
cameras.
had 90,000 words written. This story poured out of my head. It was the Roman, the woman in the military leading the action. It was a thriller. There were bad guys, there were plot, everything. And I thought, now what do I do? Anyway, a friend of mine who was already writing rescued me in a way. And we together went to conferences and classes. We learnt our craft. Both of us were mad readers. As you say, you read from that young age. And I'll read anything, basically. It is literally the cornflakes packet and then correct all the bad grammar. You know, it's terrible. Being a writer spoils you as a reader. And then I sort of thought, I think I need to write another book in this series. I really got into this. And then another one. And then one of the secondary characters who had also been, they're all military, I'm afraid. And so I went back in time and wrote 3 books about her. I mean, it just kept going on and on. And I was doing Insurrectio, which is in the second series. And Carnegie, the historical writer who I know, gave me an endorsement. I thought, that's quite nice, you know. big cheese in historical fiction, a lad's lad, if you like. And it is about rebellion and so on. He said, you write a really good riot. And he said, and really good surprises. Why don't you do a modern, non-alternate history? I said, I've got one more book to do in this series. I can't leave a trilogy with only 2. He says, well, give it a go. So I did. And I made my heroine Franco-British because I live in France and I have lived here for many years. And I'm also French and English, British nationality. So I made her here and I thought, well, she can't be ex-British forces. She can be ex-French. So this has all been concertinaed into about 13 years since I retired, unquote. And it's going to go on, I think. So all these things have come together. I mean, creative writing is such a world away from doing an exercise report, which is very succinct and very structured, but it's a form of writing. And I suppose all those different forms of writing over the years have got me in, I don't know, stood me in quite good stead. So I don't know, is that an answer you were looking for?
Absolutely. Les, do you want to talk any more about how you got started?
Les?
Yeah, I've been thinking about after I left the military. There was only a couple of years between leaving the military and getting married, and I've been thinking about writing stories, and it kind of went on the back burner a bit as life sort of appeared, and then children and things like that. But then I thought, well, I'm going to give it a go. So I just started off with short stories. Never showed them to anybody, wrote them, threw them away, whatever, never thought it was any good. But then there was a call for submissions for a short story anthology by Matt Hilton.
This is the, not the Alive stories,
he did, it was called Action. Pulse
Action. I knew it was an A, I couldn't bring it to my head.
Yeah.
And you've done crime and publishment as well, and I know, Alison, you've done shorts, so let's carry on with yours.
So it all, once I thought, right, I'll send it. So I sent it, instantly regretted it. I thought he'll never like it. It was rubbish. Anyway, it got into the anthology, and that's what kicked it off. So I carried on with the short stories, but then the character from my short stories became the sidekick in my first novel, and then it just carried on from there. And once I had those characters in my head, it became easy to just carry on the story because I knew exactly what they would do in a certain situation. I just had to drop them in a situation. My first novel begins with the main character, Alison escaping from a Mexican prison.
Oh.
So that's the start of it. So she's in a bit of trouble anyway. So right at the start.
Of course she is. Has to be.
So all I have to do is keep dropping her into all these dodgy places and giving her into trouble, and it just carries on from there. So, I've just gone for, and the new book, the one that's just come out, it's not an Ali Sinclair book, but it's in the same sort of universe. So there are a couple of characters that are in all of the books. So I suppose at some point I might bring them together and have like like an Avengers Assemble thing where I get all the characters together in one book. But I haven't thought of that yet, so still.
How many have you done, Les?
I've written 5. I've had there's 3 out. There's one probably coming out next year. One that I've just kind of finished, which is a completely different thing altogether. Still an ex-military character though. And I'm starting work on my 6th novel now. So, but like I said, that publishing's a little bit behind, so there's only 3 actually out.
Right.
So,
Alison, how many have you got in each one?
There's 2 Alison Clares, 2 Logan Palmers, which is the new one that just come out, and then the one I've just finished is a character called Ryan Bishop, and those books are the other books I've written are sort of espionage stories,
Mm.
you know, MI6 and that type of thing.
Hmm.
But the one I've just written, is more like a Da Vinci Code style thing.
Ah.
The guy's ex-military, but he's also he studied archaeology at university, and he's an expert in the Middle Ages. And that's where the story sort of kicks off. And
Like the sound of that.
his old professor's been killed, they think, although the police think it was natural causes, and it sort of goes from there, him trying to find out what's happened and that kind of thing, and following the clues.
Oh, good.
Mm.
That sounds good.
So hopefully,
Alison, how many? Sorry, go on.
I'm saying hopefully that'll be out soon, but
That sounds good.
I was just going to ask how many you've got in each series, Alison.
Oh, right. The Romanova ones, there's 3 full novels plus a novella for each strand. There's sort of 10 altogether, but there's Karina, who's one heroine. She's the modern day heroine. So there's 3 plus a novella on her. And then the 1960s to 1980s heroine, Aurelia, is again 3 full novels plus a novella. And I've done some short stories. Funnily enough, Les, I went back and did them afterwards because a historical friend of mine said, we're doing some short stories about 1066. We've got to have you in. You're the alternate history person. You have got to do it. I said, I don't know anything about medieval. You've got to be kidding me. You know, I mean, historical, it's bad enough doing the Romans, which is an area I know. I said, I don't know anything about that. And she said, yes, you do. Just get on with it. So she said 5,000 words. And I thought, oh, that's not quite so bad. I could do that. I said, I write long form. I don't do short. Anyway, I did have a Romanovan who went back and tried to stop the 10. In my story, she intervened between Harold and William, and they didn't invade that year. I won't tell you what she did because it's a spoiler otherwise.
Yeah.
But each of us were given a month, and we did our story mine was September, I think I had, Miss-September. And we had to produce an alternative ending. And that broke the duck, and I actually then put out a companion collection of short stories, which I thought, I've got over that, because I tried short stories like you did, Les, and I got nowhere. I got a highly recommended in writing magazine, but that was it, one. And I thought, this isn't for me. But I've gone back now. And
yeah, I haven't written any shorts for a little while, but I still like writing them though.
If it's a short story and it's a quick glimpse type thing or a small incident, it works really well. That's how, the novellas, the story was only 35,000 long. That was it. And it would have padded it if I'd gone into 90 or 100. The story is as long as it is. You put lots and lots of subplots in a thriller that's a full length, and that's fun because you can, like you say, you can have certain characters keep coming back later in different books and tying it all together. And I love doing that. And the readers sort of spot, oh, I've seen that character there. And I think readers I enjoy it as a reader. Yeah. And I think when you're doing a series like both of us are, it's fun for us as well.
Yeah.
Do our secondary.
One thing I like with short stories is to try out other genres. Yes. Just to see if I can, if I like writing a particular genre. I've done horror. I did one that was, I had one published that was supposed to be a bit like the Twilight Zone.
Ah.
So a bit scary and then a twist at the end type thing. Yeah. And then I was asked if I could do one which was post-apocalyptic military horror.
Oh.
Which I thought sounded a bit niche.
Wow. That's a mix.
But I gave it a go.
It's kind of niche, yeah.
I had a go at it, and I wrote one. It didn't make it into the anthology, though. It got shortlisted, but it didn't make it in. So I've still got that one sitting there. Whether I'll do anything with it or not, I don't know yet.
Well, you can change some of the elements in it, perhaps, and resubmit it somewhere.
I was actually thinking that I could turn it. It would actually make possibly a novella, that type of thing. You extend the characters out a little bit, and so there's hope for it. I haven't abandoned it completely.
Well, no writing is ever wasted, is it?
No, they'll always get used somewhere. I always use everything somewhere.
Oh yes, me too.
Alex Hawley wants to know, he's currently writing shorts. Have you got any tips? So I'm going to ask both of you that. It was directed to Les, but I'm going to ask you both because you're right, short stories are they are supposed to be kind of a glimpse. It's quite difficult to get them right, I find. I mean, obviously we could say, read a lot of them and see what kind of things happen and what time period it's contained within, and maybe not too many characters, but anything specific that you found as you've written them?
Well, I've always, like I said, when I was younger and I started reading Roald Dahl's short stories. So that's where my love of short stories comes from. And when I was growing up, I always used to watch The Twilight Zone. So I love that kind of story. So I always try and get something that feels like a complete story rather than a chapter out of a book. Some people will write a short story and it'll feel like a chapter out of a book. There'll be bits missing, and there's nothing wrong with jumping into the short story when the action's already taking place, but you have to kind of explain why and sort of take it on and finish the story at the end. So you want a complete story, just short. That's the way I look at it, and obviously try and put a twist in at the end.
I think you've got to have sort of one theme in a way. I'm just trying to think of one I did where I had two secondary characters from a series meet, and they had to meet eventually because in the books they were there, but what are the circumstances in which they met? And the story is of the trigger of them meeting. And I only had those two people in it, although obviously they referred to other people. And I think keeping it down to just those characters and then having not quite a surprise at the end or a twist, but it's quite nice if you open a circle at the beginning, you close it at the end.
Yeah.
And that's quite a good, for me, quite a good framework for a short story. Open it and close it, but slightly differently. I think you don't have to be super clever or contrived. Just keep that one theme or topic. Otherwise, you're going to be writing a novel.
Yeah, I mean, I was asked to write on the crime and publishment weekends. For a couple of them, the people that were there put an anthology together of short stories. So it was the first one was called Happily Never After.
Which can be found on your Amazon page, Les. If anyone wants to go to LJ Morris on Amazon, they can be found there.
Which is all stories about marriage that have gone wrong, obviously, because there's murder involved. And the second one was called Wish You Weren't Here, which is on the Amazon page.
That's clever.
My story for Wish You Weren't Here was called Under Canvas. And when we talk about making sure you complete the circle, so at the start of the story, the guy wakes up and he's in a tent. So obviously he's under canvas. They've gone out camping, him and his wife. By the end of the story, I won't tell you the exact details, but he's under canvas again, but in completely different circumstances. And obviously you can imagine there's crime involved, there's murder involved, but the fact that he wakes up at the start under canvas and the end of the story is him back under canvas, then that's completing the circle.
That's really, really good because that's the sort of thing, and you've got to keep it on the one story. Yeah, I think that's very good.
I will say to anyone who's writing short stories, if you go into the book club and you search the hashtag UKCBC Shorts, Will Templeton runs the brilliant, and I know Kath Middleton's done it as well. They've both run this for the book club. It is Will's baby, but Kath is a great support. She's fantastic. So there's lots and lots of stories some are by published authors, some are by people having a go. there's an awful lot in there, so a lot to learn and a lot of
But I
really
know-
fun things to
I
read.
know some people don't like writing short stories. Mike Craven hates it, apparently. He told me a while ago that he hates short stories.
Right.
And he hates locked room mysteries.
Oh,
which
no, I can't be
funny
doing
He
that.
because-
hates locked
No, no.
room mysteries. Me and him
Yeah.
are going to have words.
I'd
But
shoot the
then
lock out
the
personally if
botanist-
I was there.
The Botanist is a locked room mystery, basically. So
That was kind of my point. It's behind my head here,
yeah,
The
so
Botanist.
yeah.
Right.
I'll show you.
But
If I can
Mike's written a few
touch it
short
without
stories
knocking
as well.
stuff
Ah,
over.
right.
There you go.
He's ex-army, so I feel like we're allowed to give him a plug tonight. He's also in Criminal Shorts that Will and Kath
Yeah.
Right.
edited and put together. That's got a Mike Craven story in. It's not Poe and Tilly. He wasn't allowed to do that.
But he's
But it's
in
it's really
the
good.
Crime and Publishment anthology, the Happily Never After.
Ah,
Yeah.
I think he's in that one as well. But yeah. So for somebody that
So-
doesn't like short stories, he tends to write a lot of them.
He did one of the quick reads as well, which
Yeah,
will
that's
be
right,
around on one of my book piles here somewhere. But I'm not going to try and get that one because I will knock everything over, and that was really good. So, what are you both working on at the moment, Alison?
Well, yeah. I went completely, well, not completely away from the thriller. Well, it is a sort of a thriller. I wrote a historical novel back in Roman times, and there is a bad guy, and of course there are some etc. And they don't know who he is, and there's lots of threats and stuff. So I'm more in the thriller area. But my fans wanted to know the foundation story for Roma Nova back in the 4th century. So I had to sit down and write it. And I had done it as a short story, a little bit of it before. But they said, no, what happened next? So I had to write the damn thing. Now, of course, I've done what I always do. I've written one book and I have got too much story. So I shall have to write another one. So
I can almost hear Caroline Maston cheering from here.
well, thank you. But I am then going to go back. These will come out back to front and do the next.
No, they're fine
they're
on our
good.
screen. Yeah.
The Double Identity was the first male one. Double Pursuit. And I'll have to write double something for the third one. But there'll be lots of.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Have you
crime.
got ideas?
Yeah,
for
but
the
that'll have
title?
to be after this one that I'm writing now. So I want to conclude it because although each story, I mean, as Les will know, even if you write a series, you have to conclude and resolve a story. I cannot bear cliffhangers. I really hate it. I will not buy it, the next one, if it's a cliffhanger. I hate them. So each story is complete, but there is an overall arc with the characters. Then they go on their various journey. So I shall write another one of those. So I've got plenty to do for the next year or two.
Les?
I get pestered a lot by people who want me to write the third Alice Sinclair book.
Ah,
So I'm kind of working on that one all the time, really. I'll write a chapter and then put it away somewhere and work on that. That's called Killing Ground. So hopefully that'll be out next year. But I've started thinking about a private detective style story, but set in the 1980s.
I love PI stories.
So yeah, so that's kind of what I'm trying to work on at the moment, and obviously writing about the 80s, I don't have to worry about mobile phones or the internet.
no,
or
just
anything
going
like
to
that.
say that. No
And,
internet,
so
no mobiles.
It means that the private detective's
Brilliant.
going to go out and actually find somebody or do something, knock on doors and that kind of thing. So it make it a bit different. And obviously, I was there during the 80s, so you know I'll remember all that kind of stuff.
I tell you something, when I was writing Aurelia, which is set late 60s and then later on, you had to remember when things were introduced, and I did do a lot of looking up. Surveillance tapes, they were tapes, and you had to put the cassette in. But you did have 2 speeds, so most good systems had a 24-hour tape and a 6-hour. And the 6-hour one would be triggered if something happened on the 24-hour one. And so I had to go back and look at these dual tape systems. And I thought, I knew they were there. And things like, when did paper fax machines come in and they weren't the thermal ones that you peeled apart? And that was all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to have to do a bit of that. I don't like to say, although I'll remember most of it.
Oh, you think you do?
It's easy to make a mistake
I warn
and
you.
drop something in that didn't exist. And so, so I'll
I
have to do a
warn
bit
you
of
now.
research on that.
I've got 80s adverts and 90s adverts in my head now for Yellow Pages and VHS tapes and
Yellow Pages.
That skeleton that used to walk across the screen and
that was
Ariston?
cassette tapes. Yeah,
Cassette
tapes. Video
Walkmans.
tapes. Oh, Walkmans.
Yeah, when did Walkmans come? Yeah.
I wonder if I showed my children a cassette tape and a pencil, if they'd have a clue.
Oh, pencils! I must have used them at school.
No, with a pencil with the cassette tape.
Oh, to do
the
to
purpose
rewind.
of it.
Winding the tape back in. Yeah. So I can put all that.
Oh, Mike Craven said hello.
Oh, right.
We were just talking about you now.
Very kind.
He's stalking me. Absolutely.
Oh dear, it's fun though because you go back and you see, oh yes, I remember that, and you get down the research rabbit hole. I warn you, you know.
Yeah. I do that a lot anyway.
Yeah, I do all the time. It's terrible.
We've got 2 minutes left.
Oh, no.
That 45 minutes has flown.
We just had.
We were just showing the botanist, Mike. I feel like we need to take it away again now. Tell me what your quick read was called, because it's on one of the piles on my desk and I don't want to touch it. I may have actually lent it to Julie. But yeah, remind me, Mike, what it was called. It's either here or it's on my best friend's bookshelf.
Oh, that's not
see.
Good. Best friend's
one or the other.
Yeah, right. Accessible.
But the Cutting Season, thank you. It's a quick read, which is a fantastic series of. Well, it's a series. They come out every year, and they are books that are made to be easily read. And I love to read them in between bigger books because they're just such an easy read. And there's loads of different ones, and there's different genres. The Black Mountain by Kate Moss is beautiful. Yeah, something to go and have a look at. But give us a quick recap of what you write and where we can find it before we go.
Oh, right. Okay. Well,
Alison, you go first.
Alternate history thrillers and modern French spy thrillers. And it's very, very complicated. It's Alison-Morton.com. And that's all the stuff on there. And I'm on Twitter and Facebook and all the rest. But the Alison-Morton-.com is the start place.
Thank you. Les?
Yeah, my published books so far are all sort of espionage thrillers, action type stuff. You can find them all on Amazon under LJ Morris, or ljmorrisauthor.com has everything, including links to the short stories and everything.
Well, thank you so much to everyone who has watched and joined in tonight. Thank you so much to you two and to Neil and Trevor for joining us. It's been a really special evening for me. So thank you both very, very much.
Well, it's been great.
I hope you'll come back for more interviews.
We've had a good talk. Thank you.
I'm trying to stop it and I haven't got the button. Kaz has got it.